Hello, this is Jerry Morton. Welcome to my podcast series titled Finding My Way, a memoir by Jerry Morton. This is podcast 65, titled Employed. Podcast 65, Employed, is an account of finally obtaining a position after being discharged from the Army in June 1969. My new employment required a move across several states to start a position that was far more complicated than I had anticipated. Podcast 65, Employed. One day out of the Army found us living in Harrodsburg, Kentucky with my wife's aunt. My immediate task was to call the Director of Psychological Services for Pinellas County Schools in Florida about a position as a school psychologist. The school system's central office was located in Clearwater, Florida. As described earlier, he had offered me a school psychologist position back in March, as I was qualified to be certified as a school psychologist by the Florida's Department of Education. My master's degree in school psychology qualified me. Unlike Ohio, I did not need to have had a year's internship in order to be certified as a school psychologist in Florida. I had declined the offer due to accepting a position with a major corporation. I was to participate in a special corporate project that assisted the corporate officers to prepare for the future. Just a few days before leaving the Army, my corporate contact called me to say the project had been delayed a year or so by the organization's CEO. I had immediately contacted the Pinellas County School System's Director of Psychological Services. He had stated that he did not have a position to offer me at that time. However, he might have a position open up for me shortly. I was to call him back in a few days. Several few days calls had taken place that always ended with, "Call me back in a few days." So here I was, the day after leaving the Army, making a long-distance call from Harrodsburg, Kentucky to Clearwater, Florida, to find out if I had a position with the Pinellas County School System. Nothing had opened up yet, the director told me, but there was still hope that a position would become available soon. Once again, I was to call the director in a few days. It was pleasant being at Aunt Anna's aunt's home. The tension of needing to find permanent employment as soon as possible was made a little more tolerable by the graciousness of Aunt Annie and Cousin Henry. My wife was named in honor of her aunt and had stayed at her home for a year to attend school in Harrodsburg. Our college, Center College, was located about 10 miles south of Harrodsburg in Danville. Since Anna and I were committed to each other by December of our freshman year, I was able to share many happy hours at Aunt Anna's home during our 4 years of college. Just 2 years later, the Army pulled me out of graduate school at Miami University of Ohio. My first year in the Army was spent in training, which didn't allow for Anna, then my wife, to be with me. Anna spent that year as a high school English teacher at Danville High School. She spent almost as much time at her aunt's home as she did in the little attic apartment we had in Danville. We were comfortable in Aunt Annie's home except for the tension of an unknown future. 2 weeks out of the Army and nothing had opened up in the Pinellas County school system for me. The tension was rising for all of us. I needed to get a job. Anna's father thought he could get me a position near his home, Shelby Gap, Kentucky, with his county's highway department, working on one of their highway crews. I was appreciative of his efforts, but declined the offer. 2 weeks had passed without a job. Our plan was to call about the position in Florida on the coming Friday. If the Director of Psychological Services did not yet have a position opening by then, I would leave on Monday for New York State. I knew that I could get certified as a school psychologist there without having an internship. My plan was just to get up there and keep visiting school systems until I found a system that would hire me. I had told the Director of Psychological Services for Pinellas County during my last phone call with him that I would have to start seeking a position with other school systems soon. I placed the phone call that Friday afternoon. It was just a task I said I would do without the expectation of being offered a position. "Hello, this is Jerry again. Good news! I can offer you the position." The school psychologist position started in the middle of August. We would immediately leave for Clearwater, Florida, and stay in a motel for the last days of July and into August until we found someplace near there to live. Dr. Green said that he would provide whatever assistance we needed to find a house. Once we got to Clearwater, he would provide me with all the information needed to be ready to begin August 15th. What a relief! We planned to leave on Monday, just 3 days away. Once again, the car was packed to the windows. The baby, the dog, and the two of us took off that Monday morning with great joy in our hearts. What an adventure this was going to be! Neither of us had ever been to Florida. Anna had never seen the ocean. Shortly, we would be living near the beaches of Clearwater and the surrounding areas on the west coast of Florida in Pinellas County. The 1-year-old would love playing in the ocean. We would love playing in the ocean. The dog would love playing in the ocean. Everyone would love playing in the ocean. This was simply wonderful. As is usual for long trips, we arrived in Clearwater in the evening. Before finding a motel to stay in that night, we had to drive down to the beach. The main road into downtown Clearwater just abruptly dropped down from the main landmass to the sea level in the beach area after traveling through the decline that contained the major business section of the city. It was beautiful. We decided to find a motel that was within easy access to the beach. There were some located at the top of the main road. We decided to try the first one we came to. It was on the right at the very top of the hill overlooking the downtown district. There weren't many cars in the parking area of the L-shaped one-level motel. In front of the long side of the L structure, along the walkway, was a profusion of tropical plants with many of them in full bloom. It could have been a scene from one of those 1940s movies about the Florida coast. The elderly couple operating it lived on site. I explained our situation to them. We could stay one night, or a week, or a couple of weeks, until we got a place to permanently move to before the start of the school year, hopefully. Their price for the night was very reasonable. We could stay in one of their efficiency units. Those units had a little kitchen and plenty of room for use to set up sleeping space for the baby. We could stay as long as we wanted. The two of them talked among themselves before they offered us an extremely reasonable weekly rate. I think they had decided to adopt us, dog, baby, and all. We ended up staying there until we found and bought our house just before the start of the position in mid-August. Even after we had moved, we would drive by their motel with great fondness for them in our time there. Unfortunately, Dr. Green, the director of school psychological services, was very busy. He was unable to assist us as much as we had hoped that he would. With the assistance of a real estate agent, we were able to find a brand new 3-bedroom house in Largo. Largo was an area about halfway between Clearwater and St. Petersburg. Dr. Green, Tom, had thought that would be a good location for us, even though he had not told me what area of the county my schools would be located in. The little house was in a newly developed subdivision right near the main intersection of the road connecting St. Petersburg and Clearwater going south to north, and the road heading west to the area called Treasure Island and its beach. About 3 houses to the east of our new home were a horse barn and corral that separated the houses from Cross Bayou. We bought the house through a VA loan and a down payment of $600. The Army was sending me 2 months' pay for unused vacation days. That money was a lifesaver. We were able to move into the 1-story green and white house just before the start of school. Our furniture, stored through the Army, arrived shortly thereafter. Everything was working out perfectly. Just prior to the day the school psychology staff was to meet for the first day of staff meetings, Tom, Dr. Green, asked me to meet him in his office. My school assignments had been made. I was to serve 7 all-black schools being integrated for the first time in the inner city of St. Petersburg. That was fine with me. I did not realize that St. Petersburg still had not integrated its school system. Tom explained that the school system was under a federal order to integrate its schools. This first year, the system was to integrate the school staffs. Some white teachers and professional staff were being sent to the all-black schools, and some black teachers and staff were placed in the all-white schools. I didn't have a problem with that. One of my closest confidants at the psychological warfare school was a black major. I admired him. We spent what little spare time we had sharing thoughts with each other. He was a good man. As far as I was concerned, there was no difference between people of color and whites except for their suntans. The second year of the mandated integration of schools would have black children sent to some of the predominantly white schools and white children sent to some of the all-black schools. My main concern was in relearning how to administer and score the various testing tools I would be using in conducting psychoeducational evaluations of the children. I had to accomplish that immediately, and I did. The system had brought in 6 new school psychologists to supplement their existing staff of 5 or so seasoned school psychologists. I was assigned 7 schools in the heart of St. Petersburg's inner city. There were 5 elementary schools, 1 junior high school that my elementary schools fit into, and the high school. The school psychologists not assigned to the all-black schools had 10 schools to serve. That difference was to produce a little conflict during this first year.